Going live right now with Ben Goessling. We've got breaking news, Ben. Joe Flacco, who may or may not be elite, will certainly be the starting quarterback for the Colts when they play the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. ESPN reporting that on Tuesday afternoon. I don't think this is great news for the Vikings. What do you think?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think I was just talking about this a little bit this morning on the radio with Paul Allen and K-Fan, and we were discussing the possibility of Richardson versus Flacco, and a lot of the discussion is what you would expect. I mean, Flacco has been pretty efficient running this offense, and Richardson obviously has not had much success other than a few highlights that we've seen. You know, downfield throws, a dynamic arm, his ability to move around. Certainly, we've seen some of those things, but has not done a terribly good job of being able to execute this offense apart from some of the highlights. So you instead see a quarterback that's been in the league a long time, that has seen just about everything, that will keep them in this game. I do think it is a tougher assignment for the Vikings, just where the two quarterbacks are at right now, facing Joe Flacco, than Anthony Richardson on Sunday night.
Well, I mean, Flacco so far this season, he's won them 2 games essentially.
Yep.
He's only 1-1 officially, but he came in and finished off a game that they won. He's got 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception. I mean, Richardson's been having kind of a miserable go of it. 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's obviously about 3,000% more nimble as a runner than Joe Flacco. So it's a completely different person you're gearing up for. Flacco's 39, Richardson's 22. Like, you couldn't probably ask for 2 more disparate quarterbacks to prepare for. But Flacco saved the Browns season last season, and he's kind of doing it again for the Colts. And you see them, they're 4-4 right now. They're kind of in a spot where they're saying Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win right now. And I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, you need somebody that can run your offense efficiently. I mean, the ability to make highlight reel plays, which Richardson certainly has, is a nice thing to have, but you need somebody who, when it's 3rd and 4, can I hit a 7-yard completion over the middle to keep the chains moving? I mean, that stuff's not the stuff that we see on highlight reels, and it's not the stuff that draws a ton of attention on social media, but it is a lot of being able to play quarterback in this league, where it's, can I change protections? Can I get us out of a bad play call to make sure that this down doesn't blow up in anybody's face? I mean, a lot of that stuff goes into the job. And everybody kind of knew with Anthony Richardson that this was going to be a little bit of a project. And it is an interesting, just kind of 30,000-foot level decision, because you had a guy that everybody said, this is going to take some time. He's going to need a little bit of a development plan to get him ready to go. And obviously he gets hurt last year, which does change that plan significantly. But then it's where the thing becomes a question of, how ready is he to go versus how quickly do we want to see him on the field, especially when you are trying to maximize that rookie contract. It is not, beyond this week, it is not irrelevant to the Vikings, because they are going to face a very similar situation to this with J.J. McCarthy potentially next year, where he misses his rookie year because of the injury. He doesn't get that development time, at least not quite in the same way. They are trying to do a lot of things behind the scenes that I'm actually writing about in the next couple of weeks, but he's not going to have the game time in the way that he would have if he would have played a little bit this year, or even the practice time if he had been healthy enough to be on the field to get at least some on-field work as the backup quarterback, or potentially starting a couple of games later in the season. Well, however that would have looked, he can't do it. So now you're going into next year, potentially, if he becomes the starter, you're trying to do so based on not really much on-field development time for him, kind of like what Richardson was this year. I don't think anybody is looking at McCarthy saying he's the same level of project as Richardson.
No.
And a lot in college, but a lot more in college, played it in a pro-style offense. So those things do change, but it is a reminder of this tug of war, so to speak, between developing quarterbacks long-term and saying, we want this guy to play now because he's a rookie quarterback, and if he's good, it gives us a huge financial surplus at that position. So it's a reminder, I think, in some ways, of how tenuous this can be when you're trying to develop a guy that you draft that high, and there's all sorts of expectations. There's all sorts of excitement to see him that can play out in a lot of different ways. But being able to say, we're going to wait, and maybe it'll still work out fine for Anthony Richardson. But this, when the Vikings talk about how difficult it can be to take a quarterback from draft night to a long, successful career, this does kind of ring on some of those notes, I think.
Well, and it's interesting too because Richardson was the quarterback they liked in the 2023 draft, and if things had happened differently, if they had had a lesser season, they might have been in a position to take Anthony Richardson at that point versus where they wound up. But yeah, where they were, they certainly weren't going to get Anthony Richardson at that point. But a guy that they liked certainly, and then going forward, kind of spinning forward. You wouldn't mind this so much if you thought you could pressure Joe Flacco because obviously he is not mobile at all. That was the element that Anthony Richardson brings. You get to play a completely different defense. But the success that Brian Flores has had against young quarterbacks and then the disappearance last week of the pass rush, and you really, the last couple weeks, they just haven't gotten enough pressure. What if they only had 3 pressures against Stafford last week? Like, that's got to be concerning. Like, Flacco's the kind of guy that can kind of like Stafford and Goff, diagnose a play, get the ball out. He's not going to be confused as much by some of what Flores is trying to do.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think they are going to have to just be better at getting home and winning one-on-one matchups, being able to set edges, being able to turn corners and get to the quarterback, because it's not going to be as much of you do things that he's never seen. I mean, a lot of these coverages, once you get through a lot of the pre-snap stuff where they're trying to disguise things, or they have 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, all those different things, they do become, more standard coverages. You may get to them in different ways, especially a lot of their cover 2. They have, what I guess the football wonks, a lot of football wonks called non-traditional Tampas. I mean, you're getting to Tampa 2 coverage, but not playing it quite the same way. They have plenty of that, but a lot of it is on tape, and a lot of it is something that if you're playing cover 2, you know how to handle cover 2 by this point in Joe Flacco's career, certainly. So a lot of what they do, and Brian Flores talked about this a lot today, it's not necessarily reinventing things. It's all of the little details in plays. I mean, giving up 3 first downs on 3rd down penalties against the Rams is a big factor in that game. A lot of that stuff has to be better against veteran quarterbacks because you're just not going to trick them in the same way that you might with a young quarterback. So Flacco playing is another reminder of what they're going to have to do against quarterbacks that they just can't trick in quite the same way. So I do think it's not good news for the Vikings necessarily, but it is sort of another thing that will probably help coaches drive home what I think they've been talking a lot about this week is just the little details have to be a little bit better to get back to winning on Sunday night.
Where's the subterfuge? Final thing. Where's the subterfuge? Why did they let this leak on a Tuesday? Come on, like make them prepare for 2 quarterbacks, right?
Yeah. And especially 2 quarterbacks that are
completely different.
They are.
Yes,
it's probably a reminder. Closed circuit to NFL coaches who are watching this, which I'm guessing none of them are because they have much better things to do. But it is a reminder that subterfuge probably doesn't win you that many games in the end of this league. And coaches do it when they have opportunities to do it because, why not? If you don't have to release information, then why do it? But They may have decided it's better to just send the message this week and clear up any discussion or confusion about who is going to start. But yeah, when you have Anthony Richardson, who plays very differently than Joe Flacco, they decided at some point to not play that card of the curveball of not knowing who the quarterback is going to be. They said, let's just go with Joe Flacco and go from there.
It's a gift to NBC. They flexed this game. We're like, what are they doing? And now there's more intrigue, at least I would think.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think NBC moves this game when the Vikings, I think, were still undefeated. And the Colts, who I think had a winning record at the time, and it was Eagles-Jaguars. They didn't like that matchup for a lot of obvious reasons either. But yes, with both of these teams floundering a little bit, the Colts losing with Richardson, and then the Vikings losing the last 2, you want something that's a little more palatable in terms of a close competitive game for NBC. I'm sure they're thinking about some of those things. Not that the Colts make any of these decisions, but a hidden benefit for NBC, I guess, in that regard.
All right, Ben. Good analysis. Appreciate it. Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune. Thanks for watching. We'll see how it goes on Sunday.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Mike.